talking. Every day, man, it's like these motherfuckers is just like professional liars, you know what I'm saying? It's wild. Listen, Bin Laden blow up projects. It was your nigga. Tell the truth, nigga. Was knocked down the tower. Tell the truth, nigga. Was knocked down the tower. Tell the truth, nigga. Bin Laden blow up projects. It was your nigga. Tell the truth, nigga. Was knocked down the tower. Tell the truth, nigga. Was knocked down the tower. I pledge no allegiance for them of the president's speeches are baptized by America and covered in leeches. The dirty water that bleaches your soul and your facial features, drowning you in propaganda that they spit through the speakers. And then you speak about the evil that the government does. The Patriot Act to track you to the type of your blood and try to rape you and say you was trying to sell drugs. No federal indictment on together to show you love. This shit is run by fake Christians, fake politicians. Look at their mansions and look at the conditions you live in. All they talk about is terrorism on television. They tell you to listen, but they don't really tell you their mission. They funded Al-Qaeda and now they blame the Muslim religion. Even though Bin Laden was a CIA tactician, they gave him millions of dollars and they funded his purpose. Strapping hype 9/11, that's just scratching the surface. Bin Laden blow up the projects. It was your niggas. Tell the truth, niggas. Was knocked down the tower. Tell the truth, niggas. Was knocked down the tower. Like Bin Laden blow up the projects. It was your niggas. Tell the truth, niggas. Was knocked down the tower. Tell the truth, niggas. Was knocked down the tower. They say the rebels in Iraq still fight for Saddam, but that's foolish. I'll show you why it's totally wrong. Cause if another country invaded the hood tonight, it'd be warfare through Harlem and Washington Heights. I wouldn't be fighting for Bush or white America's dream. I'll be fighting for my people's survival and self-esteem. I wouldn't fight for racist churches from the South, my nigga. I'll be fighting to keep the occupation out, my nigga. If you ever clock someone who told this shit, but look at you, boy. Imagine if they shot at you. I was raping your moms, and of course Saddam Hussein had chemical weapons. We sold them that ish after Ronald Reagan's election. Mercenary contractors fighting a new era. Corporate military banking off the war on terror. They controlling the ghetto with the fear of attack, trying to distract the fact that they engineering the crack. Storm strapped like Lee Malvo, holding a sniper rifle. These bullets will touch your kids, and I don't mean like Michael. Your body is sent to the morgue, stripped down and recycled. I fire on houses. If that's unfortunate life, because innocent people get murdered in the struggle daily, and poor people never get this shit struggle daily. This ain't no alien conspiracy theory, this shit's real. Written on a dollar underneath the Masonic seal. All right. We are here at Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. I hope you enjoyed that Immortal Technique song. We've got Terrell on the line. Terrell, you there?
Yes, sir, I'm here. Mic check, mic check. How do I sound?
You sound brilliant. How about that? This is the 9/11 show, Terrell's first show back in a while, so I anticipated this for a long time. And Terrell, I understand you brought some material with you, some 9/11 material that you'd like to discuss here at freedomslips.com. We've got a wonderful chat room here. I encourage everyone to come and join us. It's a free-for-all tonight, and I hope everybody enjoys themselves because we're going all night here, more than 8 hours here. So greatly appreciate you joining us, Terrell. So what's on the plate tonight?
Okay, well, the thing that inspired me to do this was whenever the story came out, December 22nd, the judge signed, the name of the story is on December 22nd, Judge Iran, Taliban, and Al-Qaeda liable for 9/11, which I thought was a great big joke. Came out of New York. It says a federal judge has signed a default judgment finding Iran, Taliban, and Al-Qaeda liable in September 11, 2001 terrorist attacks. I thought that was just ridiculous. It sounds like Saddam Hussein and the weapons of mass destruction and saber rattling and trying to put blame somewhere else, whenever the government documentation itself proves that our own government did 9/11. So I finished up my book, the 9/11 Truth Exposing the Cheney Rumsfeld Black Operation, in 2010, just about the same time Elenin was discovered. And so I wanted to come back to Revolution Radio and lay out the evidence and help people to understand what really happened on 9/11 in a series of shows. We did a 5-hour show. I did it on Rathbone, David Rathbone's show. It was a very long show, but we still couldn't get it all in there. And I could see we need to do this over a series of weeks, and Hawk agreed. And so I want to, from my book, exactly what happened. It's kind of elaborate for first show, probably the first 2 hours, people will not even recognize this as a 9/11 story. But I do believe that the backdrop, the underpinning, the baseline needs to be established so people can begin to understand and see through the smoke screen from the perpetrators that actually carried out this attack. And I will name names, and I'm going to lay all this out. Our reports have been made to all the government agencies, to the Justice Department, to the State Department, everybody from the Arlington County Board to the fire department down there in Arlington County, all the way up to the president, everybody in between, from attorney generals, every office of the Navy, and everybody. I've done the research, and I've delivered the message, and they're just not listening. So I wanted an opportunity to lay this out for everybody in a series of radio shows that is recorded, so that people can go back in the archives and listen week to week to week. It's a lot of information. It's very difficult to follow, but I'm going to lay out to the best of my ability. And
Terrell, did we lose him? Yeah, Terrell.
then, for Mike, then we'll open up questions and have people.
Yeah, we're losing. You're cutting out, Terrell.
Okay, let me close some windows.
Yeah, close those windows. How about this? Like Terrell mentioned, we're going to open the phone lines in the second half of the show, and so sit tight, and we'll get to Terrell's material. And like he said, most of you won't recognize it, and let's see it. Let's hear what you have to say. I've heard a lot of reviews about your information, Terrell. So you guys,
Yeah.
I set the bar high for you tonight.
Okay, am I coming in better now? I might need to slow down.
No, you're doing great. Don't slow down too much.
Okay, this is what I'm calling the 9/11 in plain sight radio series for the Revolution Radio, and it's based on my book, 9/11 Truth: Exposing the Cheney-Rumsfeld Black Operation. And you can get a PDF version of this by going to TerralO3.com and just click on the donate button, whatever you can afford, $1, $5, whatever you can afford, and I will email that to you. It's a big long book with lots of illustrations, and it's the format, it's the outline for what I'm going to be covering here in the next weeks to come. So first of all, I would like to tell a little bit about myself so that people understand who I am and where I come from and how I was led to this investigation, if that's okay. So, my work actually began as a Bible researcher, as a scholar, and I mean as a student of God's Word. And I looked everywhere. I'm a truther to the core, and I searched everywhere, even before I started searching Scripture, for places from the Hindu religion to using prana and understanding the chakras, the power centers of your body, how those things work. Studying with the Chinese, the Qi, some martial arts, and so they use Qi in the same way that the Hindus use prana, because they are the same thing. We're talking about the life force. From Thinking in Destiny by Harold Walter Percival to The Secret Doctrine by Blavatsky, I was just hungry, and I searched and searched and searched, and eventually I circled back around to God's living Word, and I realized that's a living document, and I began a lifelong study decades ago. And you can find my works in places like ChristianForums.com, BibleDebateForum.com. I've been members there for years and years and years. So one of my gifts as a researcher is keywording, recognizing patterns in literature. So the places in Scripture where the words appear and where they don't appear. For example, the word faith. Faith's a very, very important part of being a Christian, but that word faith does not appear in the Gospel of John, even one time. And the word grace does not appear outside of John 1:14-17 in the four Gospels, except for one place, in Luke 2:40. So I like to try to understand where the words do appear and also where they do not appear. That gives me great insight into what God's doing in His Word and what our government's doing in documents like the 9/11 Commission Report. So whenever I jumped over into my 9/11 investigation, then I keyword those documents too. And I found out that, for example, the 9/11 Commission Report, 585 pages, does not contain the singular or the plural term explosions even one time. It's been keyword sanitized from the document. Then I go to another document like the Arlington County After Action Report put out by the Justice Department. It's supposed to contain all the information about what happened at the Pentagon. That has many, many explosions, by the way. But that word explosions also does not appear in that document one time. Both documents contain the singular term exactly 6 times, as if there was only 6 explosions on 9/11. And so when whenever I look at the government documentation and I compile all the evidence, it shows a clear pattern of deception, something that Iran had no way of controlling, or Al Qaeda or anybody like that, except for Al Qaeda is a CIA operation, and the operatives Osama bin Laden and Barry, who was talked about in the previous show, they are CIA operatives. And what you're going to find out is that the CIA, the Director Gates and the current director, CIA directors, and what you're going to find out is that the lettered agencies have taken over our government, and that they are working with the Department of Defense and the State Department and running many psyops on the United States people and global operations too, with the Mossad, with the Russian intelligence, with the Chinese. They're all working together. It's very important for people to realize after 9/11, this is where it starts, right here at 9/11, because they all have to tell the same lies now. 9/11 is most definitely an inside job, and I've got all the evidence laid out, word for word, with precept upon precept, and everything lays out. And the truth is actually hiding in plain sight. It's right in front of everybody's noses. Unfortunately, we're looking at a spirit of delusion, and it's described in Scripture in 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, starting verse 7, as the mystery of iniquity, and it forces people to believe what is false from verse 10. It's overwhelming power. And so this is like the Matrix. This is a red pill, blue pill moment right here. And I've got a red pill in my hand, and I can share it with you. Or you can take the blue pill, and you can go back to sleep, go back to bed, and wake up in the morning and believe anything that you want to believe. But I do have the truth of Scripture and of 9/11, and those things, like the Scripture, took decades for me to figure out. 9/11 took 5 years to figure out. I've only been on the Heavy Mass Object project for 1 year, so that's taken me a little bit of time. I don't claim to have all the evidence gathered or to know everything that's happening with the Heavy Mass Object yet, but I'm going to get there. I'm like a hound dog. I'm on the case. It's just there's a lot of disinformation, and a lot of these same intelligence community operatives are working against us. So there's so much information out there and disinformation that it can become very difficult to know the difference. So
Gerald, just give me 1 second. I just want to let our listeners know we've got a wonderful chat room here. Come down, visit us. freedomslips.com is the website. This is TerralO3 with the 9/11 show, a series of shows we're going to have over the next few weeks, and we're just getting started here at freedomslips.com. Come down and join us in our chat room. Sorry, Terrell.
No, you're fine. First, I want to explain part of my waking up process. Part of my waking up had to do with my Uncle Jack. He was a mathematician, and he was also a general contractor, like my father, like myself. And he handed me a book called None Dare Call It Conspiracy by former Congressman Gary Allen, back in early 1970s. And that helped wake me up to what Rothschild means, what the House of Rothschild, their history, how they've been controlling central banks, creating fiat currencies, and controlling masses. And then the Rockefellers, and the Morgans being American contingents, and the Warburgs on the far side, and how they've been working together for a very, very long time to control the masses through currencies. Okay, so that's very, very important. Then another good book is Creature from Jekyll Island by G. Edward Griffin. Very, very good. It goes right along the same lines, and it helps you wake up and recognize the smoke screening. As soon as you can recognize the smoke screening in the media, then you realize that the movies, what comes out in the newspapers, what's in the magazines, it's all controlled. Every bit of it. And it's for a purpose. The purpose is to condition you for what's coming next, whatever that might be. So the Rothschilds have been doing this for a very long time. As a matter of fact, the first central bank that they installed in the United States came about at the time of George Washington. And the problem for Rothschild was he was getting his central banks in 20-year installments, so there was a charter involved. The first 2 times that he established banks, then that charter ended, and then he had to figure out some way to get a grip on the money supply again. So whenever you study history, you're going to find out that Rothschild is responsible for the death of Abraham Lincoln through the Secret Service. He's been controlling the Secret Service from day one. That the history books, is the way you're reading it, is not the way that things really happen. For Garfield, same thing. He died after 100 days. It's because of currency manipulation. And the same thing with John F. Kennedy, trying to give Americans back their currency. He was killed by the Secret Service also. The way what's recorded in the history books is not the way it appears. He was actually shot by the driver, left-handed. I know that sounds crazy, doesn't it? But the truth is far more strange than fiction. So whenever we go into my book, if I want to try to follow that timeline, the first thing that I want to do is say a little bit about myself. That my Uncle Jack was a general contractor. My father was a Class A general contractor. We build lots of buildings, giant buildings, and domes, things like that. We demolish giant buildings and we build them back again. So my experience as a general contractor was started off at the bottom of the pile, learning to use cutting torches, learning to lay blocks, bricks, and I actually went to drafting school and learned to design buildings, and I designed my first building, commercial building, at the age of 22 years old. So reading blueprints, drawing blueprints, that helped me in getting ready to do this 9/11 case, because I'm working with Twin Tower blueprints, I'm looking with Pentagon blueprints, column lines and things like that. I'm looking at bent columns that suffered stress, so I'm reading stresses by the damage reports and things like that. So my experience as a general contractor actually helped me a lot in this 9/11 case. The next thing to realize is that whenever I began this 9/11 case, I did not just write about it and do a little bit of research. I actually joined AE911truth.org, submitted my application as a general contractor, and got accepted, and I worked behind the scenes in those forums. See, whenever you go to that website, you see one thing, but members with passwords, we see something totally different. We see forums, and we go in and discuss things with other members, and a lot of activity. Well, through that time, what I found out was that the AE911truth.org is a haven for operatives, government operatives, people like Michael Anderson that runs the Pilots for Truth board, people like Russell Pickering, that's the handler for Dylan Avery and the Loose Change Brats. Well, that's what I call them, the Loose Change Boys. You got everybody's pretty much that is aware of 9/11 has gone to the Loose Change website. Well, I wrote extensively on all of these boards, running my investigation. And I actually learned a whole bunch from working with the operatives. That's why when people say, well, you have operatives in your group, I've worked with operatives before. They're some of the best sources. Those are the guys that you want to keep closest to you whenever you're running these investigations, because they're great sources of information. You get information from them that you just cannot get anywhere else. Russell Pickering, he ran PentagonResearch.com, and I believe you can only find that in the archives now because he's closed all that down. But that guy is a master at gathering evidence for 9/11, even though he interprets it for the 9/11 cover story. He still gathered a lot of evidence for me and helped me along in this investigation without realizing it. So I wanted to mention that. I was going to bring in a lot of the dirt stuff. I don't really want to do that. I got involved with a dispute of using a banner in my post. The bottom of my post, there was a banner that I actually found from another AE911truth.org member. And so I just copied it and pasted it in mine because I wanted to send people to that website. Well, Loose Change guys, Dylan Avery, he has a whole big old giant echelon of administrators, and so does Richard Gage. Well, they ended up in a series of emails back and forth, over the simple use of this, how I was never to do this again and things like that. And I ended up banned from both websites over this nonsense. So what happened was, I was an insider over there, and the insiders, they didn't realize that I was an outsider, and they were talking, and I was finding out a lot of information about them and about what happened at 9/11 with the fireproofing teams and how the Mossad came in. There were 51 of them. I was finding out a lot of great information, and then I messed up and said the wrong thing. Tim, do you still have me?
Yes.
Okay, I messed up and said some of the wrong things, and they got onto me. They sniffed me out, and I ended up banned. And from not just from that website, but from Pilots for Truth, the Pilots for Truth websites, Let's Roll, Phil Jahan, Loose Change, and other boards, because not for being mean to people or for attacking people or anything else, but because those guys are running lettered agency operations. They're controlling the information that's out there. They're deleting the truth, and they keep posting the same 19 bearded jihadist radical stories in order for the information to be controlled. So I'm seeing the same pattern with the Ellen investigation that I see with the 9/11 investigation, is of control of information. I had to do a lot of research in those days, and I'm going back now because I'm getting ready to do these shows again, and a lot of that information has just been deleted. It's been wiped off the internet. Seeing a clear pattern of it, and so that this is part of the reason people remain asleep. It's because the lies are what would stand out, and the truth is being systematically removed from the websites. So that's another reason that I wanted to do this show, is to help people to wake up to what's going on. So my literal hands-on experience in building buildings helps me to interpret the evidence. The part of my training was to recognize busts in blueprints. So the architects draw pretty pictures. They do not even build. They don't even draw things that are structurally sound. They take pretty pictures and they send them to the engineer. The engineer then makes the thing work. Then that engineer, so we have A drawings, which are they're labeled A, and then we have S drawings. They are labeled S by the engineers. But then all that information goes to a third engineer that works for the steel manufacturer. That steel manufacturer comes up with a completely different set of drawings, and those are the ones that I work with as a general contractor. Then I go back, I have to find busts. In other words, when you add up all the dimensions, all the column lines, all the little walls, it's supposed to add up all the way to the end. Well, part of my job as a supervisor is to find busts, breaks in the program, breaks in the building, and to fix it to work. But I don't work with the architect like Richard Gage or even his engineer. I always work with the steel manufacturer. So I just want to let you know that just being an architect does not make you an authority on building these buildings or knowing what's going to happen or anything else like that. It's the general contractor that you really want to consult when you have questions about building integrity or making things work, things like that. So I sit in the shoes of the general contractor, even in his drafting office, his bid room, and his drafting office. That's why I feel that I am better qualified to look at the damage reports and to look at the blueprints and to tell you the stresses that were put on particular things rather than the engineer. So I actually feel that I'm as qualified or better than these people at ae911true.org, and I was a member with them, but now I'm booted out. So I just want to point that out as we continue. Okay, now to understand the overview of who is responsible for 9/11, it goes to the banksters. This is has nothing to do with Al Qaeda or Osama bin Laden. Well, it does a little bit with his family. Actually, the World Trade Center buildings, Twin Towers, the family, the general contractor, bin Laden. That's where this goes all the way back to the beginning. A lot of people don't realize that the bin Laden family, instrumental general contractors in the building. Another fact people cannot wrap their head around is that these buildings were designed to become obsolete. At the time that they became obsolete, they wanted to be torn down. They were given pre-demolition charges, not just these two, but World Trade Center 7. So there was no need to wire them 6 weeks after Larry Silverstein got control. They were already wired for demolition before anybody got there. But to understand the overview of what's happening, we go all the way back in time. You have to understand Rothschild, that he is the head of the snake that got in the world. He's the one that financed both sides of World War I and World War II. And he's about to do the same thing with World War III. He's collapsing currencies, he's collapsing economies, and when the outrage, whenever the uproar comes, he's going to start World War III, and he's going to finance both sides. This is the third time that he's going to do the same thing. So the important thing that I'm pulling out of my book comes from Anonymous Andy and Daryl Bradford Smith. I am thewitness.com from Looking Glass News. This is information they posted, the history of the House of Rothschild. There's just a few things that I think that are important to understand about the Rothschilds. In 1791, the Rothschilds, through Alexander Hamilton, an agent for George Washington's cabinet, set up a central bank in the USA called the Bank of the United States. This is established with a 20-year charter. That's in 1791. This is how far back Rothschild began influencing our country by going around what would become the Constitution and section the articles of the Constitution that give our Congress the right to print money. That there should not be any Federal Reserve in this country. Federal has nothing to do with the federal government. It is a private corporation on its third charter and from the House of Rothschild. The next event after that is in 1861. You see, in 1811 is whenever the charter ran out for Rothschild, which started the War of 1812. So history is much, much different than is in your history books. It has to do with banksters and people like Rothschild. Well, in 1816, the charter, I'm reading from what I quoted before, the history of the House of Rothschild. The charter for the Bank of the United States is renewed for another 20 years with the Rothschilds in control of the American money supply. The British war against America therefore ends with the deaths of thousands of British and American soldiers, but the Rothschilds get their bank. That's what the war was all about. It was about Rothschild and getting his bank again. Then, if you're watching the Rothschilds, you also have to watch the Council on Foreign Relations. One of the reasons that I cannot belong to an Occupy movement is because they fail to identify the enemy. They don't even know who the enemy is. I think they're clueless. Rothschild, people who instituted the continuity of government on 9/11, there are working groups working for the Council on Foreign Relations. Council on Foreign Relations, Trilateral Commission, Bilderbergs. Those are the three primary leaders of the United States government. People in Washington are puppets. You cannot complain to your congressman because all he does is rubber stamp legislation written by the working groups of the Council on Foreign Relations. So when you realize that, you realize the Occupy movement is doomed. All the Occupy movement can do is be subverted or co-opted by Rothschild and his banksters for whatever means that they determine necessary to meet their end. See? So it's misguided. I believe that the Occupy movement is completely misguided until they recognize the House of Rothschild as the problem and the Council on Foreign Relations and their stewards, people like Dick Cheney and Rumsfeld. Those are people that are still in power right now through the Council on Foreign Relations and their working groups putting out legislation through their more than 40,000 lobbyists in our country. Okay, so in reading from their book again, it jumps from 1881 to 1992. Cheney Rumsfeld practiced secret continuity of government plan, later activated on 9/11. Most people don't realize the continuity of government plan was activated. It was just a plan. It was a working group by the Council on Foreign Relations plan for all these years, and they could never figure out a way to get it through. So they could start doing their FEMA camps and things like that, getting the legislation that they needed. Well, this is how they did it on 9/11 through Cheney Rumsfeld in a self-inflicted wound at the Pentagon. Tim, do I still have you? You're fading in and out.
Why am I fading in? No, you're the one who's talking. I'm here.
Okay, I'm just making sure. Okay, I'm reading now from this timeline. And it says, throughout the 1980s, Dick Cheney and Donald Rumsfeld are key players in one of the most highly classified programs in the Reagan administration. Presently, Cheney is working as a Republican congressman while Rumsfeld is head of the pharmaceutical company G.D. Sterl. At least once per year, they both leave their day jobs for periods of 3 to 4 days. They head to Andrews Air Force Base near Washington, D.C., and along with 40 to 60 federal officers and one member of the Reagan cabinet are taken over to a remote location within the United States, such as an underground bunker. While they're gone, none of their work colleagues, even their wives, know where they are. They are participating in detailed planning exercises for keeping government running during and after a nuclear war with the Soviet Union. We see now it makes more sense about why they have a continuity of government. It's because of heavy mass object. So the 9/11 is going to tie exactly in to my next body of research. See what I mean? So I'm in between scripture and then 9/11, and I'm keywording all these documents and seeing a pattern, and it's pointing towards some big event that's coming in the future, but it's not World War III. I believe that it has to do with this heavy mass object that's coming in here. And the reason is because of the lettered agency operatives and the keywords that are used and the things that are not used, particularly the things that are not used. Okay, so whenever I can see, I'm continuing. Unconstitutional continuity of government. This highly secret continuity of government plan is known as Project 908. The idea is that if the U.S. were under a nuclear attack, 3 teams would be sent from Washington to separate separate locations around the U.S. to prepare to take leadership of the country if somehow one team was located and hit with a nuclear 9/11 weapon, or the second or third team to take its place. So what they're doing is they're disguising this this continuity of government is something good, whenever in reality they're getting ready to run their underground bunkers. They are training in underground bunkers for this to happen, but it doesn't have anything to do with the Russians or the Chinese. Remember, their intelligence communities are married together. They're all working together. Whenever it appears that Russia and the United States are having a problem, they're doing this deliberately to put up a smokescreen as if they're not working together whenever they're all in bed together already. Because Russia has an art program, Norway has an art program, all these people do that know what's happening, the ones that are in the loop, the ones that the Council on Foreign Relations are giving orders to and receiving information from and help from. They're all on the same page already. So in my book, I give an overview of this, of the continuity of government and the Rothschilds, and bring it all together so that people can understand where we truly stand as far as the government. Because whenever I say government, we're having a big, giant semantics problem. You're thinking Obama and the Vice President and the Congress, but that's not the government. Those are the puppets of the government. It's the Council on Foreign Relations. It's Rothschild. The banksters are the ones that run everything. So after that, then we have to tie the knot at the Creature of Jekyll Island between the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers and Morgan. And then that's a holding of the hands and partnership of the global banksters. Because it's really under Rothschild. Rothschild had quadrillions of dollars before Bill Gates was ever born. And he's the big chicken in the chicken house. He's the head of the snake. But he realized at a certain point that his plan had a problem. That his charters kept running out. So he had to develop this plan to have an endless charter, or one that ended 100 years later, rather than one that he had to redo every 20 years and kill another president in order to get back in. So that's whenever the Creature of Jekyll Island, that's whenever they met Jekyll Island in 1909, so that they could get all the rich families together, and come up with a plan, which what it turned out to be. It was an Aldrich plan in 1910, after the panic of 1907 was caused by J.P. Morgan. So the Morgans, the Rothschilds, the Rothschilds, they all conspired together to create panic so that they could have the solution. That's what you're going to see as a reoccurring theme. You see, 9/11 was panic, and then the solution is the continuity of government. So this is like the Reichstag fire in Germany, or Hitler, 9/11 with Bush. We're seeing the same thing. History is repeating itself. Hitler and the Nazis invaded Poland, and Bush and Obama are invading the Middle East, one at a time. It's the same program. It's just under different. They have different names, but it's still all under the House of Rothschild in a plan that he began orchestrating back as long ago as George Washington. So I'll take a breath here if there's anything that you want to ask there, Tim.
Terrell, you're doing good. You're doing great. Terrell, you have a Pal Talk room, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, paltalk.com. Where can they find you? What's the sub?
Okay, you go to paltalk.com, and then you download Paltalk Messenger, and you get yourself a username and password, and then you find Terrell's research group under Education and then Other, and you click on it, and you show up in our Terrell's research room.
Okay.
And then you can find more information. I've got videos and a page on 9/11 at TerralO3.com.
Okay, great. And I just want to let our listeners know that they are tuned into freedomslips.com. We've got a wonderful chat room here. Come down and join us. We're going all night here. We have TerralO3 with the 9/11 report, and we'll be going for a few more weeks. This is just the beginning of many episodes that we'll have discussing what the leading events up to 9/11 and and everything that encompasses what happened around 9/11. Terrell, I greatly appreciate you being with us, and listeners out there, Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com is 100% listener supported. So if you can, please click that donate button. We greatly appreciate it. No donation is too little, and everything counts. And we are here to bring you the truth, just much as Terrell is right now with his 9/11 report. Sit back, enjoy yourselves, and Terrell, you got the mic.
Okay.
Great.
Then this is an overview from my book, the Cheney-Rumsfeld Black Operation Exposed. You can get it in PDF form from my website just by clicking the donate button and donate anything. Just include 9/11 book in the title, and we're going to the next step. Once you realize that this is a banker orchestrated attack on the Americans, and they're doing it for a lot of reasons. It's not like there's one reason. They're going to institute the Patriot Act. They're going to institute the continuity of government, the Department of Homeland Insecurity. This is where the legislation is going to begin. So now you're felt up at airports because we got to have more security now because we have these terrorists. You see, even though Bush and Obama and Cheney are the real terrorists, it's a game that's being played on us. But the Americans are falling for it. They're falling for it. So the next step in understanding what's going on is to understand what was happening on 9/11. What was happening was the Global Guardian war games. Most people don't realize that there were at least five war games put on by the Joint Chiefs, by NORAD, by the Department of Defense. And whenever Rumsfeld said he was just sitting at his desk, like he's not doing anything on 9/11, no, he had multiple war games going. And Bush, he's down there in the school in Sarasota, like he has nothing else to do but read ghost stories. No, there's 5 war games going on right here in the United States. Is there something you want to say, Tim?
Nope.
Okay, I thought I heard you take a deep breath. Okay, the Global Guardian war games.
You're hearing things, bud.
Okay. Okay, right from my book, it says, most everyone's surprised to hear that the United States and George Bush were actively engaged in not 1, not 2 or 3, but 5 simultaneous military exercises on 9/11. Best source of information, by far, by the way, is Michael Rupert in his book, Crossing the Rubicon. I strongly recommend people who really want to know what's going on with the war games to get that book and listen to the insight. He has great insight into what's going on here. I did not know what a inject was until I read from his commentary. And then it all started making sense of how they started pulling this off. The first war game that we can talk about a little bit is Northern Diligence. It's an exercise being conducted on 9/11. It's only reported in one place in the media in Canada's Toronto Star. The story dated December the 9th. It had a great deal to say about how 9/11 folded. It says, Northern Diligence, planned months in advance, involves deploying fighter jets to locations in Alaska and northern Canada. Part of the exercise is pure simulation, but part is real world. Now that's the key, is that you have simulation and real world. Simulation and real world. And you're going to see that some of these jets that are flying around are not even real jets like Flight 77. The Flight 77 has a tail number N644AA. And that tail number has never been assigned to a American airliner's jet in history. That came from an inject, from a war game inject. And American Airlines is guilty of playing games with the government and using tail numbers, registry numbers that do not even exist. So anyway, NORAD is keeping a close eye on the Russians who have dispatched long-range bombers to their own high north on a similar exercise. So you see, this is not just the Americans involved with Global Guardian war. This is a global thing. The Russians are taking part. The Federal Aviation Administration has evidence of a hijacking and is asking NORAD for support. This is not part of the exercise. In a flash, Operation Northern Diligence is called off. Any simulated information, what's known as an inject, is purged from the screens. Lots of other reports were starting to come in. Major General Rick Finley recalls, and now you're not too sure if they're that clever to coordinate that kind of attack. What else is taking place across North America? So there's a lot of confusion in the military about what is happening on 9/11 because what's happening is a black operation. There's a black operation that is infiltrated all of the Global Guardian war games, and the truth is only known by Dick Cheney, Donald Rumsfeld, and an elite few people. So all that information, they're members of the FBI know, but some members don't know. Members of the Arden County Fire Department know, and other people don't know. Do you see what I mean? So there's a pattern here of insiders and outsiders that is going to be revealed as we continue. Okay, I just want to include this part because it mentions the injects, and I found this most interesting and very revealing for me in my investigation. Rupert says, the reference to injects was chilling. No other mainstream press, especially the U.S., had mentioned that false radar blips had been inserted onto radar screens on September 11th, but on whose screens? Where? A major anomaly in official 9/11 accounts had been officially ignored. And I have an idea. I know who got those injects, and it appears in the reports. It's a dead giveaway whenever you do a comparative analysis of the government documentation. Then you can start figuring out who's looking at injects and who's looking at real world, and the contradictions is what tells the story for me. So then the second exercise is the Tripod 2 bioterror exercise. Now this is the exercise that was put on by Mayor Giuliani and FEMA, and that's called Tripod 2. Okay, now the interesting part about this exercise here is some people know who Dan Rather is, if you're older like me. Some people don't know who Dan Rather is. Dan Rather is the guy that took over after Walter Cronkite on the CBS News. He was the lead anchor. Okay, but he made a serious problem. He's the one that realized that there was something wrong, and what happened was FEMA was scheduled to show up on 9/11 on 9/11 to do their exercises, but FEMA showed up in September the 10th. Now the 23rd floor of World Trade Center 7 was the bunker. That was the $15 million bunker that was created by Mayor Giuliani, and FEMA showed up, and they were expected to take their place there in that bunker position. That's what it was designed and built for. So when they showed up on September the 10th, Giuliani was well aware, because he's an insider. He's well aware that this building was coming down the next day. So when FEMA called a day early, he was surprised. He was already ready. He was already preparing to empty the building, World Trade Center 7. So he told them to go to Pier 92 instead on the 10th, the day before 9/11, which didn't make any sense at the time. But Dan Rather, this is what I'm reading from the report. From Rupert. He says this explains. Let me start at the top here. Rudolph Giuliani made reference to Tripod 2 in his testimony to the 9/11 Commission. The Federal Emergency Management Agency arrived in New York on September the 10th to set up a command post located at Pier 92 under the auspices of biowarfare exercise scheduled for September 12th. This explains why Tom Kenny of FEMA's National Urban Search and Rescue Team told Dan Rather of CBS News that FEMA had arrived in New York on the night of September the 10th. Giuliani was to use this post as a command post on 9/11 after he evacuated the World Trade Center 7 building. We were operating out of there. This is a quote from Giuliani. We were operating out of there when we were told that World Trade Center was going to collapse. Rudolph Giuliani told Peter Jennings, the ABC News. Okay, so the problem is, how did Giuliani know the day before to send anybody to Pier 92, because that was supposed to be his contingency after the attacks? So he got confused and he gave the wrong information out. So this is an inconsistency this is the reason Dan Rather's not around anymore, because he was exposing the inside job. They had to get him off the radar. Then there's a section in here under FEMA, and which is important to understand. I'm just going to read. This is from Michael Rupert. Most Americans think that FEMA is a nice, benevolent agency that comes to help out when there's an earthquake, fire, or flood, but it's much, much more than that. FEMA is an enormously powerful federal agency tasked with, among other things, ensuring the continuity of government. Okay, you see where the tie-in comes in? Continuity of government exercise and the legislation to build FEMA camps, to build these RX-84 concentration camps on military bases. Early 2009. See, its part is coming under here, and FEMA is being the one giving all the authority for that. Okay, in the event of a crisis or neutralization of key governmental leaders or institutions, so everything that Cheney and Rumsfeld have been working for all these years, with all these different administrations, is coming together now under FEMA. That's the important thing to understand. It also maintains dozens of secret governmental command centers, like Pennsylvania's Site R, to which Dick Cheney was whisked right after 9/11, and where he spent much of his time in the months following 9/11. Collectively, the continuity of government operations under FEMA command have come to be known as the shadow government. In a declared major emergency arising from events even more devastating than 9/11, FEMA's authority divides the U.S. into 10 regions. under FEMA control, which then operate semi-autonomously with a full cooperation of the military. Now, this is where it gets very dangerous. The continuity of government, power staying into FEMA, he works directly under the dictator-in-chief. See what I mean? This is where the legislation now that's being pushed through, they want to detain you, just like Gitmo. They want to detain you, and they don't want to charge you. So that's the legislation that's coming out now, because all they have to do is for any administration agent to declare you a terrorist. See, but in real world, you're supposed to be declared a terrorist by a judge and a jury of your peers. By allowing the administration agent to decide or to suspect you of being a terrorist means that you're going to be like a Gitmo person, that you're going to be able to be detained, and they're going to use a completely different set of rules, which is going to fall under the FEMA authority. You see how this all ties in? And he goes on to say, long a hot topic among many researchers concerned with the New World Order, FEMA's evolution is the product of 3 decades of legislation, executive orders, and presidential decision derivatives. The power granted to FEMA are astonishing in the breadth and magnitude, and can even include seizure of private vehicles, for civilian labor on government projects, and appropriation of food and fresh water supplies. You notice it says appropriation. In other words, they can just come and take what they want from anybody. So all your constitutional rights go away under this plan. So FEMA, the reason I included it here is because FEMA was working with Giuliani as part of the Tripod 2 exercises, which is exercise number 2 that was taking place on 9/11. The third operation is the Operation Vigilant Guardian. Okay? Now, confusion has circulated about whether Vigilant Guardian is a Russian bomber exercise or something else. Michael Rupert uses several sources to pin down essential components. Michael Rupert, great researcher. I learned a lot by reading his work. Vigilant Guardian was a hijack drill, not a Cold War exercise. This is from Michael Rupert in his Crossing the Rubicon. There were a number of direct quotes from the participants in Vigilant Guardian indicating that a drill involved hijacked airliners rather than Russian bombers. So this was a change in the exercise. General Arnold had been quoted by ABC News as saying, "The first thing that went through my mind, in brackets, after receiving the hijacking alert from Flight 11 was, is this part of the exercise? Is this some kind of screw-up?" The Aviation Week article reported Tech Sergeant Jeremy W. Powell of the Northeast Air Defense Sector, that's NEADS, in Rome, New York, took the first call from Boston Center. He notified NEADS Commander Colonel Robert K. Marr, Jr. of a possible hijacked airliner, American Airlines Flight 11. Part of the exercise? The colonel wondered. No, this is a real-world event, he was told, several days into the semi-annual exercise known as Vigilant Guardian. Okay, I'm going to stop him right there, let him know that American Airlines Flight 11 was canceled on 9/11. So was Flight 77. That was canceled on 9/11. I went right to the Bureau of Statistics, and I looked it up myself, and there are zeros all the way across the board, no tail numbers, no taxi times, nothing for these flights. They were consolidated. That's right from the American Airlines. And so this Flight 11 had to be an inject. It had to be an inject in the exercise that came over from the Vigilant Guardian war game exercise. Had to be. Okay, so next, the Newhouse story had opened with a reference to hijackings and also confirmed a hijack scenario being linked to Vigilant Guardian. In quotes, Lieutenant Colonel Dwayne Deskins figured it would be a long day. September 11th was day 2 of Vigilant Guardian, an exercise that would pose an imaginary crisis on American air defense outposts nationwide. At 8:40, Deskins noticed senior technician Jeremy Powell waving his hand. Boston Center was online, he said. It had a hijacked airliner. It must be part of the exercise, that Deskins thought. See, this is part of the theme with the government, with the military, that they were running war games, but they did not know what was real and what was an inject. They didn't know what was part of their war game. From 8 o'clock till 10:30 that morning, the war games were the cover for the inside job. And whenever people say that Iran did it, Iraq did it, or Al-Qaeda or anybody else, those people do not have access and control to place injects from war games onto real-world radars. Okay, like you're going to see as we proceed, you're going to see how these injects were used and put right in front of air traffic control people so they would make reports at certain times. Okay, but there's no outside authority, no outside power that has that control over the FAA and air traffic control and FBI and all these people that are conferencing through this period. There's no way other than be an inside job. All this information was generated by inside sources internal to the United States government. And then they turn around and lie about specific events in a clear pattern of deception that I'm going to reveal to you, and we'll get a little bit later in the timeline. So continuing from Michael Rupert, this is from me. Diligent Guardian is a no-fly NORAD command post exercise using several wargame jetliners to simulate terror hijackings across the northeastern United States. This is a ground-based companion to Northern Diligence wargame exercise above. Okay, then the fourth wargame that came along that was being carried out on 9/11 is Operation Northern Guardian. See what they're you're going to have Northern Diligence and a Northern Guardian. These are going to be two war games. They have a similar name because they're working together. One's air-based, one's ground-based, but they want them compartmentalized. In other words, they want to control the information from the air and the ground. They don't want them to mix, so they can control all parts. Pardon me. Very little is known about Northern Guardian exercise, which is the reason that Michael Rupert began writing emails to Major Don Arias, First Air Force, requesting information on Diligent Guardian and other exercises in May of 2004. Mayor Don Arias, the press officer at Tyndale, called Rupert and wanted to talk, and later sent this email. Now, it's through emails like this that we gain information that's vital to the investigation. It's just emails from Rupert to a military guy. You just never know where the information that is going to come that's going to help you in your own investigation to understand exactly what's happening. So this is, I'm quoting from an email that was written from Major Don Arias to Michael Rupert. He says, Dear Rupert, the official NORAD published account of 9/11 book is in the mail. Hoping you get it by Monday. Please let me know. If you don't, talk to our exercise shop. The NORAD-wide exercise we were in on 9/11 was indeed Diligent Guardian. So you can't get information like this in the public media. You have to get it from inside sources, just like this. I also learned something that may help you with your research. The terms used for NORAD exercises have specific meanings per NORAD Instruction 33-7. Nicknames, a combination of two separate unclassified words, which is assigned an unclassified meaning and is employed for unclassified administration, morale, public information. The first word must begin with the combination of letters of the alphabet associated with the using agency. The nickname is used exclusively to designate a drill or exercise. Exercise terms are used to prevent confusion between exercise directives and actual operations. Diligent or amalgam means it was an HQ NORAD, HQ headquarters NORAD sponsored exercise. Guardian means it is a multi-command CPX or command post exercise, no live fly. See, so you have your air-based and ground-based exercises. So on 9/11, NORAD was conducting a NORAD-wide multi-command command post exercise with no live fly. So he goes on to explain, I don't want to read the whole thing, he goes on to explain in great detail from an insider's perspective what's going on 9/11, which gave Michael Rupert a leg up on his research, and then I ran across it and helped me in my research too. The information, this is what I write as my commentary. Information contained in this email allows the 9/11 truth investigator to realize that Operation Northern Guardian is a no-fly ground-based training exercise carried out in combination with Operation Northern Diligence, representing a live-fly counterpart actually utilizing jetliners in the anti-terror hijacking operation. Joining individual wargame exercises together allows multi-agency participation for getting the maximum benefit at the lowest possible price. Adding warrior to the title designates a joint chief-oriented live-fly wargame exercise. So once I started working with the buzzwords, with the code words, then I started being able to realize what each of these actually did, what they meant. So the fifth one, I believe there were more war games going on here, but this is the fifth one that we know about that was mentioned. This is Diligent Warrior. Vigilant Warrior represents a Joint Chiefs live fly attack component for the Vigilant Guardian wargame exercise using multiple jetliners and refitted A3 Sky Warriors. The A3 Sky Warriors, very important, they are decommissioned by the Navy and then refitted at Fort Collins Loveland Airport. That's something that we're going to get into a little bit later. But in this exercise, the Vigilant Warrior, this is where they came from. And they were refitted A3 Sky Warriors, painted up to resemble American airline jetliners. Michael Rupert will connect many of the dots to describing Vigilant Guardian Warrior exercise. This is what he says. He says, remember that according to the email from Don Arias, Vigilant Warrior was a Joint Chiefs live fly drill. All of this would have been coordinated under Dick Cheney's mandate, and the live fly drill could have been run through a Secret Services panel and redundant communications and information systems inside the PEOC, where Dick Cheney was involved in issuing orders shortly after 9/11. That is the presidential bunker that he's talking about. Some key players, for instance, Myers in NMCC's DDO and General Winfield could have been there at the start of the attacks. JCS war games confirmed by Major Alias had been run from somewhere, and the place they were run from was Dick Cheney, right out of the presidential bunker. That's where the no-fly order was given that we're going to get into later, and the reason that the Pentagon was attacked not one time, not two times, but three times on the morning of 9/11. He goes on to say, another Air Force website states that AFNSEP is the principal USAF point of contact for Homeland Security and is a liaison with other federal agencies. AFNSEP is also the primary Air Force office tasked with continuity of government operations, which would put it under FEMA's control in the event of a major attack or disaster threatening government preparations. FEMA was placed under Dick Cheney's direct control in May of 2001. So what we're seeing here, continuity of government, the new powers through the Patriot Act, FEMA being placed under administrative and particularly the Vice President's control in May of 2001. We're seeing a continuation of the consolidation of power inside the administrative branch, which is continuing to this day. What you're seeing is a gravity of force, a gravity of influence of authority and power given to the administrative branch and to the Federal Reserve. The administrative branch and the Federal Reserve, they are receiving more of the economic and the military authority being stripped away from the Congress. Congress is like whenever Obama decides he's going to attack Libya, he just did it because this is a trial balloon that went up and it was successful. Congress just sat back and said, okay, here we go. He doesn't have a Rothschild on Central Bank. Let's go ahead and kill him. We owe him so much because of this derivatives bubble. He's on. Gaddafi was on the right side of that. He was owed lots, trillions and trillions of dollars. But now nobody owes him anything. The Americans don't owe him anything because they went over and attacked him. So that's part of the story of what's going on. I'm not sure where that noise is coming from.
Yeah. Well, Terrell, we're going to be taking a little short break here, so
this is an excellent place.
Okay. We'll be back with you.
shall stand tall. We stand together to fight against the attempted destruction of mankind from forces we cannot see. We must prevail. We are commercial free. We are 100% listener and user supported. We are here for you, so stay tuned and prepare to be awoken.
That's right, you've got to put your body upon the gears, upon the wheels, upon the levers. You're tired of sitting in your recliner wondering if the talk radio that you're listening to is actually presenting you with facts or propaganda to manipulate the masses. How do you do this? It's too expensive. I could never get on air. I'm not a DJ. Well, now all that is possible at TerralO3.com. That's right, for $50 a month. I repeat, just $50 a month. You can be the proud owner of your own radio station that is on air 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, presenting facts that you research, things that you can prove, things that are close to your heart. Stand up against the machine. The more of us that stand up, the more of us that express our voice, the more of us that hear the truth, and that's the goal. We know that there are things going on in this world that are just killing the masses. They're dumbing down the populations. They're controlling the sheep. And you're tired of it, yet you just sit in your lazy chair and you listen, and you listen, and you listen. And you get more frustrated. The reason you're frustrated is because you're only listening. Start speaking. Get up out of that easy chair right now. TotalTruthRadio.com is selling affiliate radio stations for as little as $50 a month. That's right, $50 a month. And this just isn't the radio station. It is also the technical support that you need to get the station up and going. You have no computer skills. You don't need it. Go to TotalTruthRadio.com and look for full details. We started with 50 spots available. We are down to 44. These will go quickly. At $50 a month, a one-time fundraiser would pay your costs. So there's no reason to sit there looking at your bank book and saying, I can't do this. $50. You're on air when you want to be on air. You're saying what you want to say. You're able to do and present what you see as truth, what you see as being important. So get up out of that chair right now. Go to TotalTruthRadio.com, where you're going to find an awesome opportunity, and you're going to be able to stand against the machine that is manipulating us all. Welcome to Revolution Radio with Freedom Slips. sure that you're with us in the chat rooms as well. You have your choice of Java or Flash chat. And be sure to check out the Crow's Nest, where our financial advisor, the Crow, keeps you updated on any financial news that may affect your finances today. Thank you, and make sure you're with us for all the live shows. Check the schedule. There is a link for that as well on the left-hand side of the homepage. And we exist today only because you have done one of the following things: donated via the PayPal button, mailed a check directly to the station. Maybe you visited the swag and bought a cup or a keychain. Maybe you've told a friend. Maybe you've shared us on your social network. Maybe you've taken part in our Twitter coaching program. Whatever you've done, we thank you, and we ask you to continue to do it. Whatever you may donate today will help keep your voice alive tomorrow.
You're listening to Revolution Radio. And at freedomslips.com, we are awake. We will not be deterred. We shall find the truth. Politics, New World Order, weather control, the systematic destruction of humanity is in progress, and we are preparing to stand tall, and we attempt to awake others. Please note, we are listener supported, so click a banner, make a donation. I do not have sponsors or commercials to support my efforts. Now, stand by. You are being connected.
All right, and we are back here at Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. Terrell, you there?
Yes, sir. I'm right here.
Okay, great. I had a couple questions here I posted in the little chat box here for you. It's up to you where you want to go with this. We can open up the lines. We can answer these questions. What would you like to do, sir?
I don't see any. Oh, here we go. I'm sorry, I didn't see any questions in the chat.
Okay.
Okay, what I was trying to do right now is create a baseline so that everybody can stand in the same place and have the same information. If you would like me to stop giving information, then just go ahead and ask your questions, and I'll answer those. If you guys would rather do that, then I can
It's up to
finish the baseline in the next show.
Oh no, it's up to you, Terrell. I don't mind not taking calls this whole show. If we need to go cover some like you said, some groundwork, let's do that. It's up to you.
Okay. Well, right now where we're at is the Operation Diligent Warrior. I'm explaining that there are 5 simultaneous war games going on. They're running from about 8 o'clock to 10:30. That's the cover for the inside job. The next place I would like to take you is to Barksdale Air Force Base in Louisiana and Offutt Air Force Base in Nebraska. Those are going to be 2 hubs for the war games. These are going to be the 2. The reason I explain them here in the book is because this is where Bush is going to fly when he finally leaves Sarasota after the Petco stories and everything. This is the 2 places he's going to go, because he's going to go there and debrief the pilots that were out there flying, so that were actually seeing what was going on, doing the actual shooting of the missiles and things like that. This is where he went to debrief without escort. So this is where I was headed. I was going to talk about these 2 out of the History Commons data, and then start talking about how the aircraft were the aircraft for the war games. Well, they had to be refitted. Where were they refitted? Where'd the missiles come from? That kind of stuff. So that's where I was going to go. And unless you want to ask these questions, it's completely up to you.
I'm going to delegate. You just keep talking.
Okay.
No, I don't want to get you off track, Terrell. You were on a roll right there. We don't need to interrupt for questions just yet. We've got them. If you find dead time, then we can answer those questions. But continue. You're doing great.
Okay. Well, there are 5 war games that were happening on 9/11. That's the cover. And remember that we have the Council on Foreign Relations executives. We have Dick Cheney, Donald Rumsfeld. They are the masterminds of what's happening here. And the purpose for this is so they can get the continuity of government instituted. They want it initiated on 9/11 during this chaos and during these war games. It's going to be about 10 o'clock that they're going to actually get that instituted, the continuity of government. Okay, so where I would go is to the History Commons entry for 8:48 that morning, because we need to hear a little bit about Okay, you've heard about the war games. Now, where did they come from? Where's the hub of operations? This is the hub of operations right here. 8:48 a.m. September 11th, pardon me, 2001, Barksdale Air Force Base, Louisiana, preparing for Global Guardian exercise when attacks start. Barksdale Air Force Base, Louisiana, is an important node in the U.S. Strategic Command, STRATCOM, exercise Global Guardian on 9/11. Colonel Michael Reese, Director of Staff for the 8th Air Force, is monitoring several television screens at the base as part of the exercise when he sees CNN cut to coverage of the first World Trade Center crash, 2 minutes after it happens. He watches live when the second plane hits the World Trade Center at 9:03. Reese says that at this point we knew it wasn't a mistake. Something grave was happening that put the nation's security at risk. An article in New Orleans Times, can't say this word here, Piscayune, later recounts how awareness of the real attacks impacts those participating in the exercise. Immediately, the Barksdale staff focus turns to defense, securing Barksdale. Minot, North Dakota, Wiseman, Missouri Air Force bases, where dozens of aircraft and hundreds of personnel were involved in the readiness exercise Global Guardian. See, the government has a way of running exercises during the time of their inside jobs. You're going to see a pattern here, like FEMA in New York. You're going to see a war game exercise going on to simulate helping disaster patients at the Pentagon. That is going on the far side of the Pentagon when the Pentagon is attacked. So there's so much going on here. There's so much preparation by the elites that people are bumping into themselves. You have people that are on the inside who know what's going on, and people right beside them who are sleepers that are trying to figure out what's going on. That's what makes it difficult to run the investigation. Because if you're listening to an elite on the inside, he's lying. If you're listening to a sleeper, then he's a dupe. He doesn't really know what's going on. So he hasn't figured it out yet on 9/11 yet. So you have to recognize a pattern in the testimony of these different people, and you have to listen to the testimony of everybody, and then they start singing in concert, and you can tell who's the good guys and who's the bad guys. Okay, so my commentary. Oh no, wait a minute. Then we're going to get to the 9 o'clock entry, because the Offutt Air Force Base in Nebraska, that's another key node. Before 9 a.m., September 11th, Offutt Air Force Base in Nebraska is directing Global Guardian training exercise. Offutt Air Force Base near Omaha, Nebraska, appears to be the headquarters of the U.S. Strategic Command. The STRATCOM exercise Global Guardian that is in full swing when the 9/11 attacks begin. At least the director of the exercise, Admiral Richard Mize, Commander-in-Chief of STRATCOM, is at Offutt that morning, because the Global Guardian bombers, missile crews, and submarines around America are all being directed from STRATCOM's command center, the steel and concrete reinforced bunker below Offutt. That was from the Associated Press story. Now, this is me from my book giving commentary about this. These Global Guardian war games are generally held in October, November each year, with NBC News military analyst William Arkin dating the exercise for October 21st through the 31st, 2001 in his book Codenames. These particular war game exercises were apparently rescheduled sometime after March to coincide with 9/11 attacks. See, this is another thing. These war games are not supposed to be happening during this time. They're being changed. Dates are being changed to coincide with what Cheney and Rumsfeld are doing. And then Cheney and Rumsfeld and Bush and everybody's acting like there's no war games going on at all. I keep hearing reports of Rumsfeld. He's just in his office. Whenever he hears a loud boom, he doesn't have any idea. Bush is down there reading ghost stories, so they're acting. There's a play acting going on by these key people. Now I continue. The Omaha World Herald reported that the Global Guardian exercise had been going since the previous week. STRATCOM had been incorporating computer network attacks into the Global Guardian war games for many years, according to the 1998 DoD newsletter, which gave Dick Cheney and Donald Rumsfeld another tool to manipulate through the 9/11 attacks. The important point to realize at this stage is that multiple war game exercises are taking place, allowing Dick Cheney and Donald Rumsfeld, the Joint Chiefs and NORAD commanders, the required components for moving forward. Remember that moving forward that we kept hearing? That was the code word. To a continuity of government plan throughout a black operation, using a multifaceted war game exercise cover where Barksdale and Offutt Air Force Base were primary war game hubs. Okay, now if you want to ask a question in between, this is the preparation to understand the war games and where they were centered, where the nodes were, the central hubs were. The next part is the aircraft preparations. And but if there's a question that you have, then let's ask it right now.
Okay, great. A few questions. Did Terrell see the Black Pyramid and Stargate sitting on a barge in the river facing the towers? Only on 9/11 that no one knows what they were, and now the pics have been scrubbed from the net. If so, what type of symbology is this?
Wish I had an answer for you.
Okay.
I really don't. It's possible that this was part of the guidance system for the ball. I don't even know if that information is still on the net. The ball that actually struck the North Tower, and the plane that was drawn around by the news people, the news media. That's what we're going to get into later. It's going to be in a later show because it's later in the book whenever I cover that stuff. But if there was a guidance means, then maybe that guidance means came from the pyramid that you're talking about right there. But the pyramid and the barge escaped my notice in my investigation. So I apologize for that. Don't have an answer.
Okay. Now, I'm not sure if this question was directed at you yourself, but maybe you'll have an answer for it. What about all the put options placed on the stock market?
Right. Sign that there's an inside job, right? So somebody knew. All I can say is that a lot of people were murdered on 9/11. People that were going to spill the beans. By that time, artificial intelligence was being developed. It was not nearly what it is today. But what they did is they run simulations. They run continuous simulations into the world, thousands of them. And whenever a person, that's the reason that they're gathering data from you, from Facebook, YouTube, all these different data mining operations. It's all the intelligence community, and they're funneling. It's not that they're reading and wanting to know what you're doing. People say, well, they can't know everybody. I don't care. What they're doing is they're taking all that information and feeding it to an artificial intelligence supercomputer, and from that they're creating different world realities. There's simulations. They call them sims. They're running sims, and what happens is that certain people keep becoming a threat in the sim. So the supercomputer identifies threats in the future through its simulations. And whenever these people pop up, these are the people that are going to run the put options. Nowadays, that's going to give away the operation, right? Well, those people these days would have been killed. They would have not had the opportunity to put those options on. But in the old days, the artificial intelligence was not yet sophisticated enough to be able to catch everybody like it is now. So the facial recognition program is tied to artificial intelligence. This H1N1 outbreak, it's either they've broken the 5 nanometer barrier. That allows artificial intelligence to interact with viruses. That H1N1 virus people talking about, that is a super weapon. It's binary. The other half of it is controlled by a supercomputer, so it can kill people individually or by family or by race or by anything else. See what I mean? So I can't speak exactly to particularly how the stock market was manipulated, but whenever we go a little bit further in this investigation, you're going to see that the New York Fed had a lot to do with this. That through the Federal Reserve, that Peter G. Peterson, the chairman of the New York Fed, he's the one that bought the World Trade Center 7 mortgage. He's the one that hooked Hughes Raytheon up. He helped with the merger with Hughes Raytheon and the refitting of what I'm about to go through here. These war game jets, they were refitted by the conglomerates that were insiders for 9/11. This is corporate America, and this is the banksters working together and refitting the war game jets so that they could attack the Pentagon. So I've heard requests so many times about New York. They want to know about New York. New York is the smoke screen. Just take your eyes away from New York and look at the Pentagon. That's where the black operation took place. And then you're going to realize the truth of 9/11 and Cheney and Rumsfeld and their operation that they did there. That's where all eyes should be, is on the Pentagon. The reason that they attacked New York, it's at 846-903, is so that the lieutenant governor could call for assistance from the Navy. Then he called the Navy, and then they convened in the strong room inside Navy intelligence. And the second submunition bomblet from the Hughes Raytheon hypersonic missile killed those commanders. It actually blew up right inside the strong room. So I'll get to that evidence a little bit later. But I just just want to introduce the idea that intelligent, artificial intelligent supercomputers were already at work on 9/11, and the people that were killed, like the 5 employees of Hughes Raytheon, these were people like Barbara Olson. These are people that were going to blow the cover according to the simulations run by the artificial intelligence. Then our own government killed them, and then they created their own manifests of the murdered people, and then they sent all the bodies to Dover, Delaware, to one centralized location. The doctors did not know where they came from. It was all done under military. Donald Rumsfeld, Dick Cheney. See, so I can't speak about the financial part. I'm sorry, that's not a part of my investigation, but it does tie into the New York theater, the banksters, and the insiders, the people that knew. And whenever Bush, you're going to find out a little bit later in my presentation, when Bush went to these underground installations, these bunkers, it was filled with people that were supposed to be at work in the Twin Towers, because they all knew what was happening. But the firemen and the policemen that died there, they did not know what was happening. So you've got people that are awake, that left the site, that are in underground bunkers, and you've got people that are sent into harm's way, sleepers. And the same pattern is going to take place in the future that's coming up, where underground bunkers are going to be filled with people that know, and sleepers, people in our military, people in FEMA even, National Guard, they're going to be sent out in harm's way to deal with people, and they're going to wind up perishing, just like the New York Fire Department and just like the New York Police Department. Those people that were sent directly into buildings they knew that were required for demolition. Same thing's going to happen.
Yeah, there is 2 more questions if you want to take them, or we can hold them on.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Book of Revelations, first half of the chapter, the opening of the abyss. Ask Terrell if he feels that relates to 9/11.
No. The thing to remember about this period is that we are living within the 2 veils of Scripture. In other words, when I lay Scripture open, it lays open into a timeline. And there's 4,000 years from Genesis 3:21 to John the Baptist. Then there's 2,000 years from John the Baptist to the end of this mystery period that we're living in right now. But the prophets did not see this period. The prophets can't look into this mystery time we're living in now. What they do see happens at the end of the age, 1,000 years from now. So they see what's coming in 1,000 years very clearly. The things in Revelation, wormwood, things like that, all happens according to Daniel's timeline. And that happens according to Daniel 9:24, the 70 weeks decree. That happens the 70 weeks from the end of the age. The end of the age is far in the future. We're living through the mystery time. The day of the Lord is about to begin. 1,000 years day of the Lord must go by, and then the prophecies that your questioner is talking about, they take place then, at the end of the age.
I'm not sure what this means, but how soon was the COG implemented, and was it kept hidden from Congress? COG?
COG.
Psych, somebody in the chat room under the name some Psych had asked that question, so maybe they can clear us up on what COG means in this context, and we can move on. If you want to open the phone lines, it's up to you, sir.
Okay, I'm trying to do a quick search. Is it COGS? COG?
InfoPsych. One thing I fire. Okay, well, that's InfoPsych. Hopefully they can clear up what COG means momentarily.
Yeah, I believe that's a military acronym, but I am having difficulty determining what it means. I'm sorry that I can't help. It's not the cost of goods. I'm sorry that I can't help you with that one either. Okay. The next part of my presentation, what we just left is the 5 war games, and then we learned about the 2 hubs, 2 primary hubs, which they worked, being in Nebraska and in Louisiana, in Barksdale, Louisiana, and Offutt, Nebraska. Those are the 2 places that Bush is going to fly to after he finally leaves that school in Sarasota. The next important thing to realize is that with the Global Guardian War Games came the need to refit the aircraft. There's a long paper trail of refitting of aircraft. This is going to take us to Fort Collins Loveland Airport in Colorado. And the story is from TomFloco.com. And this is where you're going to run into some interesting characters. And more than 100 people that want to testify, but they are afraid. They're title of War Game Aircraft Preparations. The U.S. government, our military, and various federal, state, and local agencies were engaged in a series of war game exercises on 9/11 that required the refitting of jetliners, and decommissioned Navy jets in order to simulate terrorist hijackings. Okay, this is the entry on May 26, 2005, under missile and remote control systems added to small jets for 9/11. Same parts found at Pentagon. Fort Collins, Colorado, May 26, 2005. TomFloco.com. According to two civilian defense contractor employees working at the commercial corporate facilities at Fort Collins Level and Municipal Airport, in the months before the September 11 attacks, U.S. Air Force defense contractors brought a A-3 Skywarrior aircraft under cover of darkness to be completely refitted and modified at a small civilian airport in Colorado. The revelations are important evidence for a reportedly ongoing secret 9/11 probe because widely available Federal Emergency Management Administration photographs taken during the attacks clearly show that a few aircraft parts found at the Pentagon belong to a small jet very similar to a modified A-3 Skywarrior, not an American Airlines Boeing 757. That's exactly what my investigation uncovered too, from multiple sources, is that we're dealing with Navy engines, Navy parts. The Pratt Whitney engine, see, that's like a Briggs and Stratton lawnmower. A Rolls-Royce engine is like the Honda. Okay? A Rolls-Royce engine goes in a jetliner, in a passenger jetliner. They get the Rolls-Royces. But a Pratt Whitney, that's like a Briggs and Stratton motor. That's what the Navy gets, and they have to be maintained a lot. Well, the parts that were found at the Pentagon were Navy parts out of the Navy jet for sure. And this is where it was refitted right here. See, the reason that we know is because the parts that were named, that were found, they have time change parts. All aircraft have time change parts. They have serial numbers, and they're logged in books. And the serial numbers of the parts that were found at the Pentagon were found in the log books over here at Fort Collins Level Airport, because they have to keep records of all this stuff. Multiple books, not just one set, multiple books of these parts. The reason is because whenever the parts go in your car, then you just go get them replaced. But you can't do that with airplanes, or they're going to fall out of the sky. So they're gone. They run according to time, the amount of hours that they run, and then they're changed. So even the registry number of the plane is changed on the plane to reflect when maintenance must come again. So that's the way it works. And that's what got these people busted, is the parts, the time change parts that were found. There are no 757 airplane parts found at the Pentagon. They were from a Navy jet, a decommissioned A-3 Skywarrior, and that's a fact that comes out from the people who give us this story. So it's a pretty long and complicated explanation, but this story tells how and when and where that the airplane was refitted that actually hit the Pentagon. This is what I write. It says Dick Cheney and Donald Rumsfeld could not use military hangars and military personnel to refit modified decommissioned Navy jets for the use in their Global Guardian wargame exercises because the military keeps excellent records that create paper trails. Tom Floco continues, two witnesses say that separate military contractor teams working independently at different times refitted Douglas A-3 Skywarriors with updated missiles, Raytheon's Global Hawk unmanned aerial vehicle remote control systems, fire control systems, engines, transponders, and radio radar navigation systems. A total makeover seemingly for an operation more important than used as a simple missile testing platform for defense contractor Hughes Raytheon. No, this was for much more because it was designed to be an exploding bomb. This is the plane that actually hit the Pentagon and caused a fire 400 feet wide at 9:36:27. The missile strike took place at 9:31:39. So that was two separate attacks, but I'll get into that later. The parts that were found, though, can be traced backwards to this airport, the Fort Collins Loveland Airport, in Colorado. He says the employees asked not to be identified. This is from Tom Floco again. asked not to be identified for personal safety reasons and fear of job retaliation. But both told 2008 independent presidential candidate Carl Schwartz, that's an important name in my investigation, Carl Schwartz, the Air Force brought in separate teams to do top secret military work unrelated to commercial aviation at our airport. We were told by our bosses not to discuss what we had seen with anyone. The witnesses were quite fearful about several recent suicides, car wrecks, mysterious deaths, directly related to the aviation experts working on the systems that were installed on the A3s at Fort Collins, Loveland, having breached the government, blocked information flow at great personal risk, according to Schwartz, but providing more evidence for a New York 9/11 investigation. So the evidence is out there, but the lettered agency people that are supposed to be protecting us, they're the ones that go behind and make sure that nobody talks, because the intelligence community are the ones that carried out, they orchestrated, they planned, and they carried out the 9/11 attacks. So the FBI is given control over these investigations when there's no airliner even involved, unless you want to talk about a decommissioned Navy jet that they're not even reporting. See, they're reporting an American Airlines 77 with a tail number that does not even exist. And the Justice Department that's supposed to be overseeing and making sure that everybody's telling the truth is the one writing the documentation, telling the lies. That's how bad the situation is in the 9/11 investigation, and how much in trouble our government would be if there was anybody to be held accountable. But since they're all murderers, and they're all liars, and they keep telling the same story, that 19 bearded jihadist radicals did all this. So my commentary after that is the Air Force brought in separate teams for this top secret military work, completely unrelated to commercial aviation, because eventually one or more of these refitted jets will be used to simulate the jetliner crash on 9/11 at the Pentagon. Just more than 5 years has passed since this information became public. We know that Dick Cheney, Donald Rumsfeld, General Myers have done an exceptional job of evidence containment by methods ranging from threats to witness assassination. Tom Flocco continues. Schwartz, a former Republican of Arkansas, now living in Georgia and running as an independent to clean up government corruption and crime, told TomFlocco.com that he met with the employees for about an hour in February to discuss the issue. The witnesses told Schwartz that each jet was placed in a hangar just big enough for the crew and one A3 Skywarrior. We were under strict orders not to discuss what the military teams were doing or what we saw. Presidential candidate told us there were about 150 retired and active U.S. military and federal intelligence officers who will come forward and testify regarding government involvement in the September 11 attacks, but only if there is a serious criminal grand jury. Of course, that's not happening. I've worked with the Center for 9/11 Justice. I read the complaint by Bill Veal for April Gallup, who I interviewed, and I went through his claims and wrote a revision for him and submitted it to him, and guess what? He realized that the evidence that I had compiled was right, and so he changed the claims, and he tried again from another angle. From the last that I checked, he has not had any luck so far getting the getting the complaint through. The reason is because 3 judges were appointed over his case, and one of them is a cousin of George Bush. So that's the kind of corruption that we're dealing with here. Is that this is not just the lettered agencies in the administration. It's not just the legislators, people working inside of our government, because they know the truth too. The people that are running the committees in our Congress, they know the truth about 9/11 too, but they're not saying anything. And if a junior member says anything, then they're silenced. But it's also about the judges. The judges over these cases, they're being appointed by people in the administration that are corrupt too. So it's absolutely it's an inside job that continues to remain that way because of the cover-up operation that's carried on by the lettered agencies, by the administration, and the entire government is in on it. So that's my report on the refitting of the aircraft. If you have more questions, we can do that, or I can.
Yeah, I have that one question.
question there, the COG, continuity of government. How soon was the continuity of government implemented, and was it kept hidden from Congress? Do you know anything about that?
That's going to come out in my timeline. I believe the time was 10. It's around 10 o'clock. Is whenever it was actually initiated. Was it kept from Congress? No, it was done right in plain sight, right in front of them, because of the hysteria that was going on. This represented that. This created the need for. It's like the Reichstag fire for Hitler, which apparently he the one behind. The people working with Hitler, they needed to be to an event like we needed, like Bush needed 9/11, and that was their event. And this is how the Council on Foreign Relations got the continuity of government. Oh, that's what the COG is, the continuity of government plan. Didn't have the P in there, so it threw me off. Yeah, the continuity of government plan instituted. It's around 10 o'clock, but we'll get that later in my timeline. And whether how the corrupt politicians reacted, and I really haven't looked into that side of it too much. But it's just an ongoing thing now. FEMA has all this power. It's gravitating toward the administrative branch, and the corrupt politicians and the Congress are just sitting by and watching it happen. Just like it did when Gaddafi got bombed, whenever whenever he was done in, and now there's the Rothschild-owned central bank in Libya. See, now they're moving on to Syria. They're going to try to saber rattle until the rebels, whoever comes up in control, has a Rothschild-owned central bank charter in their hand. Then they'll move on to Iran. So I'm sorry I don't have an answer about how the Congress reacted.
That's all right. We've got another 17 minutes. If you want, we can open the phone lines.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So the phone number is in North America 347-688-2902. That's 347-688-2902. Or as always, a free call on Skype. Enter Freedom Screen in your search box on Skype and accept us as a friend. And you can get on with Terrell. And we've got another 17, 16 minutes with you. And while we wait for the first call, maybe give us a heads up of what's coming up next week's show.
Okay. The place I'm leaning right now, I'm looking at Chapter 3, Larry Silverstein, Peter G. Peterson, and the Shadow Government. We're talking about Silverstein acquiring the World Trade Center from the Port Authority, and that took place in April, if I remember right. And that's about the same time that Peter G. Peterson is going to buy the World Trade Center mortgage, World Trade Center 7 mortgage. This about the same time that Blackstone is going to work with Hughes Raytheon and for the refitting process for the planes that are going to be used in the Global Guardian war game exercise, of which the A-3 Sky Warrior is going to be detached and sent flying straight over the White House to eventually crash into the Pentagon. So it's we're going to move on to Larry Silverstein and Peter Peterson, the World Trade Center's trading hands. We're going to get into the Mossad, how the Mossad played a part. They were the Mossad did not wire World Trade Center 7 or World Trade Center 1 and 2 for demolition. That was done pre-construction. What they did do is they came in and they wired the floors that were going to simulate the attacks. They were disguised as a fireproofing crew and as security personnel working under Marvin Bush. Marvin Bush, the relative of George Bush. See, there's all kinds of Bush people and involved with this, even over the security of the building to make the inside job a perfect operation.
Okay, well, maybe you can answer one of my personal questions because my mother does believe the official story, and I've been trying to convince her, but you know, it's to each its own what they want to believe. She saw the planes that day. Now, I don't know if you want to get into that next week or explain to us now. How come on all the news channels and quoted by people even there, they seen the planes? Can you explain that?
They're going to have to explain what they saw. What I do include a little bit later in my presentation is how the media plays a role in this and how they place those images on the screen for people to see. But what crashed into the Twin Towers was not Flight 175. It was not Flight 11 for sure. That with the images that were shown do not even resemble those planes. They resemble a cargo jet. When you look at the pictures very closely, there was an engine found nearby that does not correspond with the Rolls-Royce engine also. So what I would say is that people, they even think that a big jetliner went into the Pentagon because of what they saw in those images of Washington. But what people are seeing in most cases, I would say in every case, but in most cases, to be fair, images that were produced for them on the television, and now they remember them that way. So if that's how they remember them, then they think that it's real when actually it is not real. But there were, I'm not saying there were no planes flying around. There were planes flying around because there were war games going on, and the New York theater was the focus. But things are not as they appear. People were tricked. They were duped into seeing things that were not there. And as the report continues, then I think that we'll be able to lay that evidence out for people. I cannot get somebody not to believe something that's instilled in their mind, especially when it has so much emotion attached to it. That's the day that we were attacked, right?
Yes.
And if people want to believe the government, because that's where they get their security from, it makes them feel better to think that Bush, Cheney, and those guys are all good guys, and that the 19 bearded Jihadist radicals did it. Unfortunately, all the evidence points and says something else. So I would ask those people to be patient. This first show was only to kind of bring everybody up to the same level, to a baseline, so that you can understand that there were Global Guardian war games going on, that there were the banksters are involved. This bankster plan, the continuity of government plan, all this has been going on for decades, for years and years, centuries in the case of Rothschild, the central bank that controls the world out of the Fed right now. So this is all converging together, even into programs that are pointing towards lockdown and the use of all this FEMA authority, but that's a little bit later in the timeline. We're talking in 9/11 about how FEMA got the authority and how Dick Cheney and Rumsfeld played a role in it by creating a self-inflicted wound on ourselves on 9/11.
Okay, very well. We do have area code 331. You are on the air.
Oh, thanks for taking my call. This is RBN. Hi, Terrell.
Hey, how are you?
Hi, pretty good. That's good. Looking at the weekend. But yeah, I was watching a documentary. I think I can call it on YouTube about 9/11, and what was brought to the attention was the picture on Time magazine. And if you look real close, you can see like a pod. You know what a pod is? Like those Stinger missiles below. You follow that?
Yes, it's called the ball. If you Google it on the internet, 9/11 New York Theater ball, the ball.
Do you have any comment on that? Or to me, that was hands down right there. And you know what? It was right in our face. You know how they like to do that? For some reason, with the symbology and the sonic stuff and all the rest, right?
Right. Apparently, the ball is the only thing that hit the Pentagon. The plane was painted over the ball, and this object that you're talking about was made to appear to be the undercarriage. It appears to be like what was the word you used to describe it? It's like it's a little compartment, or almost looks like a little missile underneath the fuselage of the plane. But from my investigation, that little undercarriage is the only thing that hit the Pentagon, that hit the World Trade Center. The rest of the plane was superimposed on top of it.
Hey, Terrell, are you going to get into that building 7? Because you know what? That when I saw that happen, I was there. I mean, no, I wasn't there. I saw it on TV. I'm like, no, this is safe. And then after the Pentagon thing, come on, guys. Is that all you got? Is this big flash? And then they had a couple turbines. Not even a turbine. They didn't even have any of the hardened steel parts on it. Nothing. All that stuff just doesn't disintegrate. There's a lot of problems going on.
Yeah. We're going to address each of these individually. This show was just to bring people up to date on the war games and on the background of the banksters, the Peter G. Peterson connection, the Fed, how the mortgages were secured, the war games is about what an inject is. An inject is a war game blip. It's just a war game, but then they superimpose that onto real world, like Dulles Airport. They superimpose those blips right on there so that people can look at them and think that they're real. That's what the flight 77 was all about. It was just a war game blip. An inject is all it was, but it was transferred over to the real world. And we're going to get into, in the next show, whenever we get to the Pentagon, then I'll be laying all that out for you. I got the timeline down to the hundredths of a second on the events. Probably we're going to spend more time on the Pentagon than any other case. It has more testimony, it has more witnesses, it has more information than all the other cases combined. So don't worry, we're going to cover all the bases here.
Okay, thanks for taking my call. I mean, I just wanted to get that out there. That was what's on my mind, how I experienced it. So I mean, I didn't do as much research as you did, of course, or at any level like that. But if you could do that, that'd be great. All right, thank you for the time.
Thank you. All right, Terrell, we've got another question about your book, if you can address it. Where can we find it again? And is it published? What's the title? Where can we get it?
You can get it at TerralO3.com. Just click on the donate button and donate anything, $1, $5, whatever you can, and I will upload it to PDF form. It's the 9/11 Truth Exposing the Cheney Rumsfeld Black Operation. I'm reading from parts of it right now. Here, this is the pattern that I'm going to follow to lay out the evidence so that people can understand who's behind it. I name names that, the guilty are guilty. And everything is exposed. The Cheney Rumsfeld Black Operation is the name of it. Just TerralO3.com. Is it published? And none of my books are published. I've been giving them away for free for so long.
And you have credentials.
Yeah, I'm a bumper car researcher, they say. And I studied the Bible. I wrote the Mystery Explained. That's another real long book. It has 80 diagrams. It's just chock full of great information. I would love to do a radio series on that one too, but we'll see. The same thing goes with that. If you want to understand the mystery explained of Scripture, same thing. Donate $1 or whatever, and I'll upload it to you PDF. Same thing.
Okay, great. And you'll be back with us every Friday at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And like you had already mentioned, what's going to come up next week, and we will cover them individually so we can have 2-hour time to discuss what needs to be discussed. I think we hit it off great. We do have 6 more minutes, Terrell, so it's up to you what you want to talk about for the upcoming show next week, and just give us a little outline so we know what to expect, and plug your book, plug your website. You got 6 minutes.
Okay, well, back onto the point of the last, I'll jump out a little bit, and I know this setup is really boring. What people really want is the explosions and around the Pentagon, and why does it make sense?
Something to look forward to next week.
Yeah, okay. The questions about the Pentagon and about the little hole. That little hole in the Pentagon, the second floor, is only 18 feet 3 inches. 18 feet 3 inches exactly. We know that because the columns are 10-foot centers, and they're each 21 inches. So whenever you do the math and you blow one column out, all you have to do is subtract one column width, and that tells you the size. The windows to the left and to the upper and above, it's a column line 14. Those windows were not even broken on 9/11. The distance between the E-ring wall on the outside and the C-ring wall on the inside is only 220 feet. This jetliner is 175 feet long. It weighs 100 tons. It has twin Rolls-Royce engines that weigh 6 tons each. And it's said in the 9/11 Commission report that it was traveling 530 miles per hour at 33 feet elevation, which the Pentagon is absolutely impossible for that to happen. It must be up in the atmosphere with the thin air for that speed. But the airplane would have disintegrated at that speed. So the government report's not even nearly accurate. But if the plane did hit the Pentagon going 530 miles per hour, the time that it would reach that back wall is 0.39 seconds. So what you have is a 60-ton titanium frame, twin 6-ton engines, and suddenly they disappeared, vanished into thin air inside the Pentagon, which is absolutely impossible. People like April Gallup that I interviewed, she was 40 feet from the impact area, and she walked out that hole that morning. just minutes. By 9:40, between 9:40 and 9:42, she walked barefoot out of that hole. There is absolutely no way that any jetliner crashed into there. And then 300 was about 310 feet away. It wasn't exactly a 45-degree angle. Then you have a little small C-ring hole. That C-ring hole is 8 feet by 12 feet, and there's nothing out there in the AE Drive. It's called. There's a roadway that is in between the C and the B ring walls. All you have is a hole. Well, that hole was created by the third submunition bomblet. It blew up in the Defense Intelligence Office in the rear, and obviously no jetliner crashed through either of those walls. But Navy Command knows that. The Navy commanders that were convening inside, just on the other side of that Wedge 1, Wedge 2 crosswall, they were all killed. That second submunition bomblet blew up exactly. It was a precision strike. I mean, super precision. That strong room is not that big. That submunition bomblet, that's one of my guesses, drawing blueprints and reading blueprints. And I can read blueprint, and I can see those columns, the way that they're exploded outwards. I can look at the cross walls. I look at the supported walls, the outside support walls of that command, of that bunker is what it is. It's fortified, where the commanders convene, and it was blown up from the inside. It actually blew a hole in the basement. It was such a powerful force, but the reason is because of those containment walls. See, if the explosion happens outside, the commanders are all safe. But when the explosion happens inside, there's nowhere for the force to go. So the force had to go up and down. That's why it blew a hole in the basement and killed people in the basement from that explosion. And then another thing to realize, this is just a prelude to when we get to the Pentagon, is that that entire section of the Pentagon that was hit was water sprinkler protected. Everything in Wedge 1 was water sprinkler protected. The only part that was attacked that was not protected was the Defense Intelligence Office in the back near the C-ring wall. It was about a 60 by 100 foot square that was not protected, so that's where the fire took place. However, it was reported that fire was put out in 7 minutes originally. It was called the 7-minute fire. It was that's how the report went. But that fire was allowed with all kinds of firemen around. We're talking firemen from so many different firehouses. It's just difficult to even number them all. They manipulated that fire. It started off by 6100 area. They manipulated that fire for 60 hours. For 3 days, that fire was allowed to move around in the Pentagon. One wave of survivors came out of the Pentagon, and after that, nobody else came out. The report, we're going to get into the $2.3 trillion that Donald Rumsfeld reported missing on September 10th, the day before he reported that money missing. Guess what? That report was never made. Do you know why? Because the people were killed. That's the reason. They decided, well, we don't need to hire more people. These people are dead. We'll just forget about the $2.3 trillion. That's our government. That's Donald Rumsfeld. We'll get more into that later.
No doubt, Terrell, and I greatly appreciate you joining us. Your website again is
TerralO3.com.
TerralO3.com. Your Pal Talk room is?
That's Terrell's research group. Pal Talk Messenger. Get it from paltalk.com. Go to education, then other. Click on it. You don't have to wait for a radio show. My specialties are scripture, 9/11, and the heavy mass object. We spend most of our time talking about the heavy mass object, but if you have questions on these others, then I'm happy to give you a quick answer and point you in the direction.
Okay, Terrell, right before you go, I've got questions for you here. Just give us your picks here for the weekend. Who's going to win, the Saints or the 49ers?
I have not turned on the TV this year. Since July, so I really don't know. It's a coin flip.
I'll put my money on you. Saints or 49ers? Go.
Saints are who's at home?
I don't care. Go. Saints or 49ers?
I'll take the home team.
Okay. Broncos or Patriots?
Oh, I have to take the Patriots are going to win that game. I wish Denver would, but my boy just doesn't have enough experience over there.
Texas.
Tebow.
Texans or Ravens? The Ravens. Hurry up.
I'll take the Ravens.
All right. Giants or Packers?
I'll take the Packers.
You heard it. Home team for Terrell. Terrell, thanks a lot. We'll see you here next week, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I greatly appreciate you joining us. Listen. Tune in. We've got great shows coming up all night